Welcome to today's spirituality retreat. Today we are celebrating a full moon in Scorpio and a lunar eclipse on this May 5th of 2023. My name is Christie Ramirez. I am a health and wellness expert and a Reiki master healer. And today there is a lot to talk about. In our retreats, I like to begin with a spiritual talk, which is a conversation about the energies, the cosmos, the moon cycle, and so much more. I also do an oracle reading. We say a sacred prayer. It's very in-depth to really bring awareness to what we are about to experience. And then I do a sambal healing session with my 24K gold sambal to help us not only heal our frequencies, but elevate our vibrations and also to cleanse and purify our aura. It's very powerful. So welcome today, and I just want to begin by saying that this full moon is a particularly special one because it is a flower moon. And what this means is that if I interpret it in my own way, I feel like this is the beginning of a deep transformation, and that is also what Scorpio rules. Ironically, it is about deep transformation, but it's about the transformation, the kind that hurts. It's the kind that when you go into the darkness, when you face your shadows, you come out better than if you would have never been in that darkness. So there is power, and there's also beauty in darkness, which is very beautiful. Because a lot of people are afraid of the darkness. And we're not talking about the dark, right? We're not talking about the darkness in people, the bad intentions. We're not talking about the other side of God. We're definitely not talking about that. We're talking about in life. Everybody has hardships. Everybody deals with challenges. Everybody deals with experiences that they don't want to deal with. But yet, that's what life throws at you. That's part of your destiny cards, and that's what's been given to you. And I feel that, there is a sense of gratitude that we are all needing to really purge. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I feel like also this full moon in Scorpio is bringing a lot of past situations. Scorpios never forget. And this is something that I've really been reminiscing about in my mind. This has been a very silent week since my birthday weekend last weekend, and I've just took some time off from work and just was focusing more on like creative content and just celebrating life basically. And after all the fun was over, it's almost like that down after the high came up, and a lot of the past started to come up. And what I started to, I guess, write out in like a quote and poetic way was that, our heart can forgive, because forgiveness is not necessarily for the other person that hurt you per se, but it's for self. It's so that you can have that peace and close the chapter with the past. Forgiveness also sets your heart free and your soul free to be able to ascend into heaven. That's a lot of what Jesus teaches us, our angels. Forgiveness is the power and it's the key to everything, and it's the key to the gateway to heaven. But just because our heart forgives doesn't necessarily mean that we are forced to forget. We are still allowed to remember, and that holds a deep spiritual reason. And the spiritual reason for that is that if you don't forget what happened, then you're going to continue to make the same mistakes. You're going to continue to step over that same pebble if you forgot that pebble made you trip in the first place, right? So there are spiritual reasons why God doesn't let us forget bad situations, and it's not to torment our soul, but it's to remind us how far we've come, the lessons that we've learned, how wise we've become, and how much knowledge we've accumulated in our soul, and how much we've grown. And we are not to make the same mistakes again. Because of course there are different levels to mistakes. There are some mistakes that are sinful, and those are of course that you repent during the atonement process and you don't look back on that. But then there are other mistakes where it's not necessarily sinful, but it's just allowing others to sin with you, or should I say step over you, or take advantage of you, or not take you at your value, which is a spiritual divine being. And if you continue to allow that, you're not necessarily sinning, but you are allowing your soul to be violated from the divinity that God has blessed you with. And so we do have a duty to protect our soul, our spiritual vessel, which is our human physical body. And we are being guided to really shield ourselves more during this time. I'm feeling, and I was feeling this in particular because of all the strong energy that's coming up energetically, cosmically. And we are in Taurus season as well. So with the moon, the full moon in Scorpio, the sun is in Taurus. And although we didn't have a new moon in Taurus this year because of what I said in the previous retreat, that we had a double new moon in Aries back to back, I feel, and that's exactly because, speaking as a sun Taurus, I think it's interesting that I was relating to my sign in this way, so astrologically. But based on these past experiences, I was feeling to myself that I felt left out of like some kind of experience in particular, which of course is more personal and private to me. But this might be feeling more strongly for Tauruses out there. And this is a cosmic reason, obviously. But it's also, I think, a metaphysical reason. I feel like us Tauruses, I'm speaking to all of us Tauruses now because I do know that there's a lot of Tauruses out there, of course, hopefully that also follow and listen to this, but that we're needing to step up our game more and in relation to building up our value, because that is what Taurus represents, right? Taurus is value. Taurus likes the good life, the luxury. But I feel like what Taurus need to work on in particular is not so much building up their status per se in the physical world, but more in the spiritual sense. How can you bring more value to self? And I feel like we have been doing a lot of this work because, at least personally for me, ever since I've evolved on my spiritual journey, started my spiritual business, I feel much more valuable and I honor myself that way much more. And it's much easier for me to set healthy boundaries with anybody who might be disrespecting that or trying to cross boundaries, because I've really learned my spiritual value and worth as a spiritual being, but also as a woman, as a divine woman, as a high priestess. And I feel like if any of you Tauruses out there feel that you've been missing out in some kind of area, and I feel like a lot of us Taurus might say love, because Tauruses do love, and we're all hopeless romantics, but yet we keep kind of like either failing at love or not attracting the right kind of love. So there might be the failure on the other side. You might be attracting people who are not deserving of you. And although there is a checkup that we need to do energetically to make sure that we in our aura are kind of sending off the right kind of energy, but this has also been like just karmic test in the way that knowing our worth enough to walk away if we're not being respected. And I feel like a lot of us has been learning that lesson. I've been learning this lesson over and over for many years, but yet I'm still alone, right? And I feel like a lot of Tauruses out there that I also know personally as well are single and are alone, and I don't know exactly why the reason for this is. It almost makes me feel sorry for all us Tauruses out there, because we're the ones that need love the most and yet are not the ones that have it. At least not the right kind of true love. And if any of you Tauruses out there are in relationships, I have a hunch that it's just not the right one. And I can also confirm this because I've also seen a lot of Tauruses breaking up with situations that just weren't the best high vibrational for them. And in fact, we're either lowering the vibration or pulling them back from their own destiny and their legacy. So we Tauruses, of course, independent souls that we are needing to just harness this independency for a little longer and continue to love it, continue to just have fun with what we already have, try to spice up our life in the ways that we are allowed and can, and maybe build friendships. I feel like a lot of us are all going to need this, because I feel that life is getting lonelier. And I feel like even more so since like 2020, so much has changed. And you know, a lot of even friendships are not genuine anymore. And I feel like a lot of people who are genuine are the ones that are closed off, and those are the ones hiding away, and those are the ones that are needing to show up their face, because there are a lot of genuine people who are waiting to also be your friend. So that's a powerful way to start this flower moon. I do feel like there are friendships going to be blossoming, the ones that are finally meant to come together, part of our soul tribe, maybe romantic partnerships as well, could be deeply divine past life soulmates. It can also be divine partnerships that are sacred, are your one. But I feel like that takes time, and we're just going to need to be patient for a little longer. And I do have more to say when it comes to this lunar eclipse as well. You know, this is the direct result of the solar eclipse that we did have in the last new moon. But there are still more changes to come down this year. And let's see if there's anything else that wants to come up. And I did. Okay, yeah, lots of crazy energy, you know, that we're needing to really navigate, you know. And actually I have a new phone cover. This is my new phone cover, and there's a lot of jewels here, a lot of luxury, a lot of divinity. There's also a divine royal crown, because that is what we are, divine beings. But I also have a Cinderella carriage, and I do feel that there is a little bit of this, right? I actually am going to be talking about more about love in a special event in my soul coaching brand coming up soon. But let's see what else that we want to talk about. I had a few notes here. While change may not be something you're welcoming with open arms at the moment, the spiritual meaning of this lunar eclipse in May is pushing for you to loosen your grip on any feelings or sensations rooted in scarcity and fear, which is again what I was just kind of tapping into. If you feel like you're missing out on something, that's a feeling of lack, and that comes from fear, which is from the ego. So what is it that we're needing to do? Life-changing moment for sure. And it is also an opportunity to deal with anything that brings emotional upheaval. So anything, again, yeah, shadow work, right? Anything that is triggering you or that keeps coming up in your subconscious, which is again what Scorpio rules, right? Scorpio does also rule the 8th house, bringing up rebirth. But we can only achieve this rebirth when we die to something, when we let the past die, when we let the past be buried away, and we start in this new chapter. You know, we are starting a new chapter, and I feel like the beginning is going to be more evident now after this lunar eclipse. And I feel like the next new moon is really bringing in even more change and more evidence in your physical reality that where you're at is the perfect moment. And you know, another saying that kept coming up in my mind, which is I feel my angel speaking and God directly channeling, was that we might be late in our time, in your clock, in your watch, but we're perfectly on time in God's time. And what this means is that God has a plan. God's timing is ever more perfect. And if you feel like you're running late on something, if it's something as important as, like, let's say, you know, for any of you ladies out there who want children, maybe if you feel like you're maybe, you know, it's getting later for you, or it can be more simple as maybe you feel like you're behind on even finding love in the first place, or you just feel like you're behind maybe just getting to work that day. And little do you know, God might be saving you from something on the way. and hence you're in God's divine timing. But if you were to follow your time and try to force it, something could have happened along the way, right? So we're needing to trust God. And even when it comes to bigger situations like, yes, having children, what if you're trying to force it and things don't go the right way because you weren't on God's divine timing? So we're needing to trust God's timing. We're never late because it's always on God's timing. So trust this. So let's get started now with an oracle reading to get deeper into today's energies.